Welcome, everyone. Good morning and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us for your roadmap to digital marketing success in 2025. I'm your host, Jim Brophy, Group Director of Digital here at Northwoods. Changes in the digital marketing space happen quite frequently, which can make it challenging to keep up with what is valuable, what is a trend, and what may be a fad. So you've come to the right place to turn to for insights and guidance on the latest news and trends. This morning, we will touch on SEO and content strategy to embracing AI, what's new in paid advertising, email trends, and much more. Our trail guides this morning will be digital strategist Alex Boston and Ed Kozlowski, our digital marketing practice lead. Ed has more than 13 years experience in SEO, PPC, and email marketing for both B2B and B2C organizations. Ed is Google and measurement marketing certified and has vast experience with Google Tag Manager and data visualization. Alex blends his academic background in creative writing with rigorous data analysis to conceptualize, create, and assess content for Northwoods clients. Alex is Google Ads and Scrum Master certified and enjoys playing music and leading a Dungeons and Dragons game for his partner and friends. Ed is an avid rock climber and skier and is expecting his first child this July. I'm pleased to have these two digital experts join us this morning. If you have questions during the presentation, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions at any time, and we will answer as many as we can during our Q&A session immediately following the presentation. Also, please feel free to use chat to connect with our team and other attendees or share real-time feedback with Ed and Alex using the reactions button in the bottom toolbar. We will also address questions we received from folks when they registered for today's class. Additionally, we'll also be sending out a recording of today's webinar in the next few days, so you'll be able to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Alex and Ed.
Thank you, Jim. So just to review today's journey, we'll be talking about setting goals and measuring them, embracing AI, which I think is a topic everyone likely expected, paid ads in 2025, some SEO, and then looking at email marketing as well. So starting with setting goals and measuring them. So one of the big things you need to do as a company coming into the new year, and maybe it's when your fiscal year is, but for most people, it's coming into the new year. You want to set goals. So what is a goal? It's a broad outcome achieved over an extended period of time. It might be something along the lines of increased sales, right? So you want to set that goal. So then we can set up objectives, which are short, measurable steps taken to achieve a goal. And these can be things like increased traffic by 30%, which may in turn, based on your conversion rates, increase your leads by 10%, right? We can start to set measurable objectives. And the important thing there is when we can measure things, we can understand if we're achieving them objectively, and then we can learn where to dig in to make changes so we can go ahead and make sure we get you to those increased sales or whatever the goal of your company is. And it's not always to increase sales. I've worked with companies where they actually want to push higher margin products, right? They want to increase their overall margin. So actually shifting into a different model, or maybe you just have new products you need to get out in the forefront or into the market and industry. It really depends on your company, and it's a conversation for goals you need to have, and then bring someone like me in for objectives to show you how we can measure getting to those goals. It's very important to measure your performance, right? So here we have a dashboard set up that allows us to have a high level report here that tells us a lot of good information. Right now we're looking at 2024 data as a whole. We look at users, sessions, and page views, we can see they're all up. So we've seen a little bit of growth there, but then we can see conversions are up 82.8%. That's a really big change, right? So we're getting, while we increase traffic a little bit, like 2% new users, 6% more sessions, our conversions are up 82%. So there's likely been some conversion rate optimization or CRO or some UX on the website that's been done to really get more bang for your buck. But then we see quality conversions are more in line with the actual users, up 2.5%. We see that that has seen some growth as well. So we've kind of gone forward. That might be a good number. It really depends on what you expect going into the new year, if 2.5% growth is good, or maybe it's undershooting a little bit, but that's conversations you need to have so you understand where you want to get. And we see our conversion rates come up 48%. If you look at the top right, we can see rankings have increased over the last 5 or 6 months pretty dramatically. But now the thing that we can note here is we can look at the session default channel groups. We look at organic search, we see we're doing really good in terms of conversions. So we know we're getting good traffic on the site. However, we see our sessions came down 3%. That's very interesting when you see an increase in rankings and a drop in sessions coming organically. And this gives you an area that you can dig into and find the answer to this. We would take this now further and go do additional analysis. And we might find that, hey, maybe the search velocity within your industry has come down. Maybe the pages that rank have shifted, and that pages that are more bottom of the funnel are ranking higher, and maybe some of the keywords have also shifted along with that, and the keywords just have less velocity based on what you're getting, but they're higher value because we're seeing the conversions come in. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in this scenario that sessions are down, but we want to investigate, we want to look further, and this KPI dashboard here lets us kind of dig into that. We can look at other areas on here. We see paid search, the traffic is up 68%. We also see cross network is up 217%. That is Performance Max. That's actually paid traffic as well. So now we might also think that, hey, paid search is up pretty drastically. That might have taken away some of the sessions from the organic search. We still want to do our digging in and find out, but we can see kind of a picture here of how this is all coming together. And there's other areas as well. Referrals up 100%, emails up 39%. So we're seeing overall the traffic coming up, but we want to go and dig into why is organic search down, just so we have a clear-cut answer. But this is a dashboard that can help us look where we need to now drill in a little deeper. And looking here, we actually are looking at Google Ads to show you how we can go specifically into a channel. I took away the campaigns names here because they are actual data that we utilize for a client. But if we look at this, we can see that impressions are up on that top campaign, the clicks are up, and the conversions are up about 10% as well. And then the second and third campaign, we actually see a drop in impressions on both. The second campaign does have an increase in clicks and an increase in conversions, but that third campaign's down in conversion. So now it's a campaign we want to drill into and understand, why is this campaign doing worse? We can look at the keywords, we can look at the ads, maybe some of the audience data, understand if there's been a shift. It also might be, if you look at conversions as a whole, they're at 89, which is actually a 1% growth. Sometimes what you'll see with ads is things just shift on a monthly basis, but we want to drill in and find out why that shift happened for that specific campaign. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is data visualization and how important it can be. So if we look down at the bottom left, we see a scatter plot for search keywords. And then in the middle at the bottom, we see search terms. So for those who don't know, a keyword is what we put into Google Ads to target. A search term is what people actually search. So you might have a keyword of wristbands and the search terms come up as Tyvek wristbands, plastic wristbands, vinyl wristbands, etc. Right? It kind of has that match where it kind of, if you're using phrase match and broad match, it gets a little more broad on the type of search terms that come in. But these scatter plots do some excellent visualization for us. So we can see in the left one, in the very top left hand corner, we can see a keyword that is very high cost per conversion on the y-axis, but you're not spending a ton of money on it. In real time, if we're looking at this dashboard, we could hover over it and see the name. But then we see one in the far right, we see one that's very strong cost per conversion. It looks around $100, but in this chart, and it's spending quite a bit of the budget. So now we know that one's a strong performing keyword, and we might want to replicate more keywords like it. We maybe want to say, hey, we need more SEO pages targeted from this because it's a very valuable keyword. Now, if we look at the search term report, we see two terms in the top right area of the scatter plot. Those are high cost and high cost per conversion search terms. We likely want to negative these out, right? We want to take action on these. These are very costly, not effective keywords. So that's where we can utilize this, in this visualization makes it very easy to pick out things and changes that we can make. And if you look at the far right, it's broken up by match type. So you can see phrase match and you see broad match. There's no exact match within this account at the time. And you can see the cost, and then you can see the average cost of or of sale. So ACoS is average cost of sale. So we know if to make that simple for people who aren't familiar with it, if we spent $50, the average cost was 50%, then the sale is 100, right? So if you had a $100 sale, the average cost would be 50 at a 50%. But from this, we can see broad match, much higher ACoS than the phrase match, but it's not spending much. The cost is really low. So it's probably skewed data. What this kind of tells me here is we probably need to test more broad match. We're relying too much on phrase match, and we want to see if we can test and experiment over time to broad match, which oftentimes tends to be more effective, but not always. That's why we want to look at data to understand what's going on. So how do you build a successful dashboard? So the first thing is the first step we talked about. We need to define those objectives, right? We get those business goals and then we define the objectives and then we can build a dashboard that represents those objectives, the different areas of marketing, maybe digital marketing that you're doing and how they're impacting and if they're successful, if they're not successful. Understand the KPIs needed. So you need to understand all the metrics that need to be within the report. I think another point on that is understand who is reading the specific report. Some people, if you're very high level in the business, they probably want a much smaller report so they can tell within 5 or 6 metrics if there's issues that need to be further dug into. And maybe you want that as well for you to dig into that. But if you're more like me who's working day to day and things, you probably want more KPIs within the report because you understand how they all work together and you can drill in much quicker when you see them. And you need to determine your data sources. So the cool thing you can do with dashboards is you can pull in data from all kinds of different things, especially when you utilize a tool like Google Looker Studio. So with a lot of clients, we have Google Ads data, we have Google Analytics, GA4 data, we have SEMrush data. These are all different data sources. We have CRM, so Salesforce, Sage CRM, HubSpot CRM, whatever your CRM is. We can pull data into there. We can make one report that has all these data sources that you can start to report on and see whether it's how is your web traffic performing or how is your actual sales performing. You can start to build out different things. And you only want to include data that tells you if you achieved your objective, right? So going back to that, we want to know, did we achieve what we're trying to do? Because it tells us where we need to drill in. And if you put too much data within a dashboard, there's a term for it. It's called data puke, where people look at it and they don't take much out of it because there's just so much on the screen. They just can't look at it all. It kind of overwhelms them, right? You want to keep it simple. Again, it depends a little bit who's the person on there and how they can read into it, but you want it to be a strong data visualization that tells a story and shows actionable insights. Kind of what we talked about before with the search terms. We had very actionable insights we could take based on that specific report. All right. So embracing AI. So I think everyone would expect this in 2025, talking about it really came to the forefront in 2022 with ChatGPT, but it's something that's been around for a long time, just in different forms. So in 2013, Google launched data-driven AI. It was a very different attribution model. It takes all the interactions of your site and it values them based on that click. And then it gives when there's a conversion, it gives a different value to each click. So now in Google Ads, you see like 15.65 conversions from this campaign or this keyword, where historically you'd probably see 16 or maybe 16.25 because there were different ones that linear attribution, maybe first click attribution, last click attribution. A lot of times now we're relying on data driven. Google launched automated bid strategies in 2016. This was machine learning and it took away some of the day-to-day work of going in for a marketer and saying, I need to change all my bids daily CPC. And then I could change to focusing, how do I grow this account? How do I get more keywords? What else can we do within the ads to grow it? I know to this day, there's still marketers who use manual bid strategies. There are exceptions of when that is the right decision. Generally, though, it is not. And you want to be using the automated one so you can go ahead and do more marketing, grow the account, and think of it in different ways. Google's BERT update came in 2019. It's a bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. All you really need to know about that is it was AI included in Google search to help it better understand search queries and the intent behind them. But that's a AI update back in 2019. And then ChatGPT released in 2022. It really changed the way we think about AI and how we utilize it within our digital marketing. Excuse me. So what's here and what's next? This isn't a comprehensive list, but what's here now? We have support chatbots, personalization tools, data analysis. AI can be really good to help you find areas of data analysis to dig further or pull things out that you weren't necessarily seeing. Content generation, automated bid strategies, AI agents, what we're utilizing now. So what's coming? Conversational AI, really now if you're playing around with tools like Gemini, you can really have a conversation with it. It's definitely not perfect at this point. It's got a long ways to go, but we are pushing more and more to being like Tony Stark slash Iron Man, where we're working and talking with AI, not just typing with it now. It's actually going to be a conversation piece, which brings us to the next point of voice search optimization. It's going to become more and more important over time. What's interesting is voice search optimization actually was a thing like 10 years ago. You could actually search, you could say things to Google like, what's the weather in Milwaukee? And that would tell you the weather in Milwaukee. And then you could ask other questions without saying Milwaukee, and it would know you're still talking about Milwaukee, and you could have a little conversation. It didn't take off like they expected. It kind of went away for a bit, but it was there for a while, and it's going to be more and more prominent now. More sophisticated generative AI, augmented reality AI, and how is paid ads going to affect that? Because as people are using more augmented reality, paid ads is going to play a role in that. They're going to try to find a way to make money off of that at some point within ads. And that'll be something we'll have to think about going forward. Even think about smart glasses where people can do things like Google Maps or look at products on there. That's more and more. It's just from glasses. It's not technically augmented reality, but things like that are going to step up and be areas of paid ads and maybe even SEO as well. And then AI agents taking a big step forward. So AI agent. So the definition of one is software program or system that operates autonomously to perform tasks, solve problems, or make decisions on behalf of a user or system. It leverages artificial intelligence techniques such as machine learning, natural language processing, and reasoning to achieve its objectives. The examples for this are ChatGPT, Siri, Alexa, Typing Mind. So why am I bringing this up, as we all know what they are? I've been hearing more and more people think that AI agents are a new technology coming, but they're really taking a big step forward. So now what it's doing, it's something like ChatGPT is starting to be able to take things and piece more and more together and help you build out your campaigns and kind of drive what you're doing a lot more. It takes out more of the manual labor piece. It doesn't remove your work, it just changes what your work is. If we take a look at this, the human touch is absolutely essential. This is an image I made. I based it off of this webinar. I went back and forth with some prompts, and you can just see a number of issues. And in the top left, it says something. I think it's supposed to say crucial marketing. I don't really know. On the top right with that arrow, you see digital marketing SUCC 025. Again, I don't know what that means. I tried to get rid of it. And then down at the bottom right, I think that's a Pokemon ball that popped up in there. I have no idea why that's in there. And again, I don't think it should be in there. It needs me to see that and make changes to it, right? And this, even as these things take step forward, it's just going to shift how we work and how we go about things. It's going to remain that way, right? Like, look at these tools. This is farmers plowing back way back when. At one point, they were pushing, then they were using animals. Now they're using tractors. It allows them to get more done more effectively and probably better than what they did before. And that's how you're going to utilize AI. It's going to help us do more, reach more audiences more effectively with more personalized messaging. And we're just going to go further in what we do. We're not going to lose the workers that do that work.
And so I can pick up from here to speak a little bit more about AI and speaking to that point of effectiveness and how much productivity this can really add to get the right tool and use it in the right way. One of the most critical choices when you're using AI tools is to choose the right one for the capacity that you need. This is kind of underscored by a research study that MIT and Harvard put out last year, I believe, which was kind of studying the actual productivity effect of AI on people's work. And when used with the right tool and the right capacity to do the right job, AI really can be a force multiplier in terms of productivity. And that's no matter what you're using it for. If you're using the right tool for the right job, your productivity can jump by up to 40%. It can dramatically change how much time a task takes to complete. On the other hand, if you're trying to stretch AI too far, if you're trying to maybe ask it to do things that it can't, or especially with generative AI, we see a lot of temptation to use it to generate all content, or just to kind of take the hands off the wheel a little bit on the AI process and just create a whole programmatic set of new content that just gets generated and sent immediately out to the public. Not only does it decrease your productivity because you have a tool that isn't really doing what it's meant to do, you're spending more time trying to prompt it to get what you want out of it, and you're kind of refining the results that come out in a way that just turns out rougher, and you have more work to do on the back end, and it doesn't actually save you any time. And the work that you get output from it can be it can be worse than what you would create if you had just done it from scratch on your own. So choosing the right tool and finding the right thing for your process is really important. Now, there's a lot of different tools out there. As Ed pointed out, there's a lot of different ways that this is being used. Some of the best ways to use AI at the moment so that you don't get what you think is a sophisticated tool, but is actually just a cardboard version of Wall-E over here that isn't actually going to do anything for you or do anything more sophisticated than you could do on your own. Content is a good way to use it. However, it's important not to just again, take your hands off the wheel. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but there's outlines and brainstorming. It's a great way to use it. To get some words out on paper is a really good way to use it, just to have some sort of text that you can work with and refine. That can speed up a lot of content generation for product descriptions, or maybe just some stock web copy that you need to produce. It can be really useful for that. And then you can add in the color and the voice and tone on your own. That's where the human touch comes in, because the writing that comes out of AI tends to be very passive voice, tends to be very verbose and lengthy and kind of stiff. Asking it to try and do human character elements and voice is just not in its wheelhouse. So that's where we get into that stretching AI too far. It's not really ready to emulate voice and tone and to kind of produce something that humans are going to want to read. What it can do really well also is put in a draft of your current content and rewrite it and provide new versions of it. And it can just generally help you get started at many points throughout the content process. Keyword ideas are really useful with existing keyword research tools. So as an example, and Ahrefs also have a lot of cool AI tools that they're coming out with that suggest, based on what keywords you're looking up, what other keywords you might like to look into. And that's going to be based around user intent and what they think could capture the audience that you're going for based on the body of keywords that you're looking at currently. The other thing it is really great for is data, not just organization, but analysis. It can help you parse through big bodies of data. You can put a spreadsheet into, I believe, the paid version of ChatGPT, and it will help you kind of parse out and even produce like basic visualizations of a massive spreadsheet. It can also, there's plugins to actually integrate it into spreadsheets directly that allow you to kind of pull in some basic functions that if you're not an Excel wizard, you may not have access to. Makes it as simple as clicking on a command, and it will automatically reformat your spreadsheet according to the function. So that can be a really great tool for those who may not be as well versed in, the nuances of Excel, but still want to get a lot of usefulness out of their data. Code is obviously great. AI makes it much faster to check over code, make sure it's working properly, or even suggest refinements or generate new blocks of code. If you do need something for a page, whatever language you're working in, it can be really helpful there. And then the final point there is just personalization is something we discuss constantly nowadays. It's just how do we create a user experience and a user journey that is hyper personalized to exactly what the user wants and only shows them what they want, and kind of identifies where they are in the funnel and what they need to see at that point. The reason I have this as an asterisk is because it is a wonderful dream in theory to have this perfect funnel of organized content that AI helps you generate. But it also requires a lot of setup and a lot of expertise to get that working correctly. So it is kind of more labor intensive and a bit more skill intensive to get to that point. So don't shoot right for, all right, we're going to dive into automation without somebody who knows that flow pretty well. When it comes to generative AI, we are getting more sophisticated. It's getting better all the time. Excuse me. But it's still something that you're going to want to avoid diving into just all of the content being generated through AI. And there's always going to need to have a human touch on the other end to make sure to act like an editor and make sure that that is producing effectively. We don't want to treat the AI like it's more sophisticated than it is. It's not going to create something brand new and ingenious. It's going to kind of read by rote and learn from existing sources. The reason that we want to try and avoid that is because it does get kind of spammy, low quality content. The more that you produce that low quality content, the more likely it is that you're going to see some SEO penalties and that you're going to see your content start to downrank and not perform quite as well. as a result of posting content that isn't super high quality or substantive, especially if you just take your hands off the wheel and let the AI drive. You will end up with content that just doesn't serve your users very well. It also doesn't know how to write for SEO. It doesn't know the ins and outs of what the best practices are for how to keyword seed within articles. Doesn't know where to put those keywords really to make the article most effective. That's kind of more abstract and thought that it won't apply very effectively. So it's going to need somebody who knows how to get those keywords in the right places. And then, of course, the main concern with generative AI is always that at some point looming on the horizon, is there a future in which copyright litigation comes into play and the people who produced original works that the system learned from to learn how to write will start coming in and saying, you can't use my work in that way. And so over relying on it can leave you potentially vulnerable to that if it comes down the line. That's a really uncertain point. Not sure how that's going to look in the future, but there are definitely people who are asking the question as far as does generative AI violate copyright laws? And it'll just be something that we have to follow in the future as far as how does that come down and what do the courts decide. That doesn't mean you can't use it. You absolutely can. Just be careful not to over rely on it. The other thing to bring up is that the public is far less averse to AI-driven content than you might expect, and that's constantly changing. Even though people are kind of pushing back against the advent of AI content, a research study at MIT found that when people were given content that was generated by AI versus content generated by human experts at a given topic, they actually preferred the AI-generated content and found it more credible and also more readable so that they could understand it a little bit better. Even when they were told that it was AI content, it only slightly reduced their feeling that it was credible. People are being drawn more to this AI-driven content revolution that's happening. Whether that's for good or ill, I think we'll all have to wait and see. And what this means for kind of the nature of content going forward, it's going to be interesting to watch. And as someone who loves the written word myself, I really wish that I could say that this was always going to be something that humans dominated. But I do think it's getting more sophisticated, and we're probably going to see the future shift more towards AI-generated content. So I think the public is less averse to this and is embracing this a little bit more. So anybody who's making content should probably consider embracing it as well. And that leads us to our first poll question, which is just going to be a fill in the blank poll here for how in general are you using AI in your digital marketing efforts? And I'll give you guys a little chance to respond.
All right, shifting over to paid ads in looking at the future or what you should be looking at in 2025. Taking a look at ad funnel. So a lot of times people are just utilizing search, and just know that there's more and more you can do with your paid ads, and you want to make sure you're getting out of just Google search ads. Specifically, you want to be touching all parts of that funnel. You should be starting at the bottom and building up that ROI, especially if you have a lower budget, but you want to build into that consideration phase, that awareness phase. And that includes search still. It's always going to be there, but then making sure you're incorporating performance max, making sure you're hitting video, making sure you're hitting display. I mean, YouTube, people are using YouTube almost like TV now. I went on a drive the other day and I was actually listening to a YouTube channel. Within 15 minutes, I had 5 ads within that one YouTube video. So it's somewhere you can be to build awareness and get in front of people. You can even remarket with it as well. Being in that display network, make sure you're getting up there as well and putting people into that funnel. And think about how you can use social ad channels to put people in your awareness funnel as well. More and more of a push for something called no-click marketing, and that's getting in those social networks and building your awareness, because that's really the start of the journey of getting people over to your website, and then they eventually come in through Google in these lower funnel parts, at least on the ad side, and start to click and come onto your site. So there is something of being more and more building out from where you started, especially if you've been doing digital ads for a while. If you're starting, maybe start at the bottom and build out, but think about how you can start getting up that funnel, because going forward, it's become more and more important. And even on Google Ads, they're adding demand gen campaigns which are high funnel, bringing more of that demand in outside of the display network, getting into other areas to kind of build demand for your market and then increase your search clicks. Bringing up hyper personalization and detailed targeting, leads to more personal ads. In a day and age where everyone is doing digital marketing, you need to stand out and be as targeted as possible when it makes sense. So hitting people in the right location, making sure if you should be very local, being very local with your ads. If you should be in the whole US, be in the whole US, but make sure you're targeting the right spots. And over time, you learn where you make the most money and maybe start to increase your bids in those areas. Layer in your demographic data. You can increase bids for your demographic. You can make campaigns specifically for your demographics, especially as you build out personas and stuff. You can start to change your messaging to be more and more personal and split your campaigns to be more and more personal and be more dynamic with what you're delivering. Understanding user interests and browsing histories. Make sure you're using your in-market segment to understand what people are interested in that are clicking your ads, because it can change what you're putting into your ads and make them more personal for people. Understand the search topics and keywords they're using. There's a lot you can still glean on a personal level from what people are searching and start to deliver that into your ads as well. And look at the web page topics that they're utilizing. And ultimately, you want to get a list of your users in there, because that's going to help you be the most targeted with your ad campaigns. But if you go through your list and build them out and segment them, you can start to make more and more personal messaging just based on your segment list as well. Making sure you're utilizing lookalike and or predictive audiences. So lookalikes are new audience with common qualities to your existing users. Utilize this data of your existing users, especially from list uploads, to find lookalikes. Now, some of you might be like, well, Google got rid of lookalikes. Yes, they did, but Google also has optimized targeting, which is essentially going out and doing the same thing. It's trying to expand who you're targeting oftentimes, but they also brought back lookalikes for the demand gen campaigns. Now you can still use lookalikes on platforms like Facebook, and you should be, right? Talking about that social and getting more people into your funnel. Or on the LinkedIn side, they're called predictive audiences. Now they're a little bit different than what they were, but they're still doing the same thing. Excuse me. So all of these, utilize your lookalikes in the right locations, right demographics, interest, browsing history. You can utilize that data to build these lookalikes and get out there and target more people who should be on your site, and it'll help improve your performance in the long run. Make sure you're utilizing retargeting, even if you're not an e-commerce store. Just for people who maybe don't understand retargeting, that's in the display network on Google. It can also be on social networks, but it's when a website visitor comes on your website, visitor leaves your website, views your ad in other social media, and then returns to your website, right? So people come on your website, they don't purchase anything, and then you target them with ads after as they go on different websites or different social networks, and then that brings them back to your website. This can be effective in both e-commerce. This can be effective in lead generation campaigns as well. But you want to make sure you're targeting the right people. You don't want to target site wide. You want to target people who are maybe a little further down your funnel that didn't take the action that you wanted them, right? They didn't put in that lead form submission. They didn't make the phone call. You can retarget these people, and you can pull out the people who did take those actions. It's a tool you need to utilize. The common one is people think of products. You click a product, it follows you around the internet, but it's not just e-commerce. It can be done in any type of digital marketing when it's done well. And sometimes the social channels work a little bit more effectively for retargeting, because people are out there browsing, kind of doom scrolling, and you get in front of them at the right time. Embrace responsive ads. So on Google Ads, we utilize responsive ads. They're ads that adapt and show relevant messages to your consumers. You feed it a bunch of different data, and it kind of tests things over time. But embrace these on the social networks as well. On Facebook and Instagram, you can build what is essentially a responsive ad. On LinkedIn, you can do the same thing. Oftentimes, people are just using single image. You want to use multiple images, or at least give it multiple ads. On LinkedIn, they recommend up to 5, because it's going to test the ads over time and figure out what works more effectively. I still hear a lot of clients not wanting to do simple A/B testing. We're kind of past that point, at least on the ads. There's areas where A/B testing absolutely makes sense. But with the ads, we generally get enough data that we can test multiple variations, and you should embrace that. Again, on Google Ads, you essentially have to, but on the other networks, right, people should embrace them more than they do at this time. And really focusing on learning how you can teach the algorithm, right? Because a lot of what we're doing is we're pushing it in the right direction. Again, going back to automated bid strategies, these are prominent Google, they're prominent on Facebook, on LinkedIn, TikTok, whichever platform you're marketing on. You need to push quality data and teach the algorithm to go in the right direction. So make sure your tracking is accurate. If your conversion tracking is inaccurate and you have a conversion focused campaign, it's going to produce poor results. That's why it needs to be accurate. You want to give it good audience data. You don't want just anyone in there. You want it to know the right audience. You give it the right keywords if the channel you have has keywords, because right, social doesn't, Google does. Give it the right ones, and over time let that build and learn, and then add more to it. And give it time to learn. One mistake people make is they don't give it enough time to go through learning curves, especially if you're using lower volume keywords or a lower budget. It's going to take longer to learn. And sometimes the right decision is just to step back for the moment and let it run its course for a little bit and let it go out and learn, right? It's going to stumble a little bit, but you need to guide it in the right place, but you need to give it the amount of time it needs. Otherwise, you're never going to get to those results. Avoid survivorship bias. The study I learned it from was from World War II. They had the Germans were shooting down a bunch of planes. The US brought in scientists to study where the planes were getting shot that returned, and then they reinforced the areas they got shot. Then the planes went out, the same ratio of planes got shot down. So then another guy came in and he pointed out the mistake they made. They studied the surviving planes, right? So you don't want to just, they didn't study the planes that got shot down. So then they studied the planes that got shot down, reinforced the right areas, and then they saw an improvement. So just because your keywords are successful doesn't mean you should stop that they're the only ones that will work. You need to test and find new ones and look at different areas. Utilize what works and try to replicate it in different ways and push it and push the envelope, but avoid just staying at, well, this is working, let's leave it as is, right? There's a time to do that, and there's a time you need to test, and you need to get out of that and learn to, okay, the data now is working. What we're seeing, the ROI is great. How do we further get beyond what we're doing today? And perform regular housekeeping, right? After a while, you have all these campaigns, you have ad groups or ad sets. It depends on the platform, what the name is, and you have different keywords. If they don't convert well over time, you want to get rid of them. You want to stop utilizing budget on them. But you want to give them ample time to learn. You want to make other decisions first, oftentimes, like, is the right landing page being used? Do we need a UX change on the website? But after a while, if things aren't working, get rid of it and then start putting in new things, right? That's going to clear out kind of wasted budget over time, and it's going to let your budget be more effective for you in the long run. That brings us to poll question 2. What kind of paid ads are you currently using? And I'll give you a second to answer here. All right, I'm going to pass this over to Alex, who is going to talk about SEO. And it looks like most people are using a combination, which is what you should be using, but it also depends on what you're seeing within your results over time.
All right, thanks, Ed. And there's a lot to talk about on the SEO front, but overall, it's pretty simple as far as what the key to SEO in 2025 would be. And that's, I think, going to be understanding user intent and writing content that matches what your users are looking for at a given moment. And also how that aligns with your strategic goals and making sure that you're crafting content that suits what you need your users to know and what you need them to do from there. And sometimes getting to that can feel a bit hazy and a bit like you're trying to read your user's mind. There are ways to get to the bottom of it and get a little bit of insight into how your users are working. The reason that I think this is going to be such a prioritized thing in the next year is that we are seeing more sophisticated AI-fueled search algorithms that are making us have a more complex understanding, or at least search engines have a more complex understanding of how users search and what they're looking for in a given moment, and understanding their intent more completely. Personalization is a buzzword right now. People are really trying to customize content to the user experience whenever they're meeting that user. And that's something that users do enjoy and value and look for. Google is becoming more and more the way that people navigate the web more than actually using your navigation menus. They're using Google to try and drive directly to the pages that they want to drive to. And that's not to say that having a good UX and a good intuitive menu isn't important. It certainly is. But there are more shifts towards just going straight to Google to try and arrive at the content that they want to arrive at, and that's the expectation. And then we have talked a little bit about voice search. That's going to be something that we're going to see get more sophisticated as the ability to understand human conversation and human questions gets more nuanced. We may see terms that look a bit weird, kind of long conversational string terms, as opposed to just the questions that we've seen emerge in the past. And those may be interesting long tail opportunities to go after in the future and optimize for conversational search. What exactly those queries will look like, we can't be sure just yet. There isn't a ton of data just yet on how that will shape up, but it'll be interesting to keep an eye on in the next year. And a lot of this comes down to keyword research. And one of the ways that we can manifest focusing on that user intent is just making sure that we know what our intention is and how that lines up with the audience. So let's say for Northwoods, for example, let's say we're investing in trying to capture more people who are interested in engaging with our services. If we try and go all in on ranking just for digital marketing broadly, we're going to get a lot of people who are searching for that term because they're trying to learn more about digital marketing broadly as a topic. And that's certainly not something that we shouldn't go after, but it doesn't mean that it should be our sole focus if we're trying to generate more interest in someone who wants to engage with our services. All you have to do is tack on the digital marketing services to that, and now the intent of the search has changed. Suddenly, it's people who are searching to try and find a service partner for digital marketing efforts. And so now you're reaching the people that you're trying to reach. And so the intent of a search is really important and really thinking through, even if it's lower volume, even if you're going for something a bit more niche, sometimes those can be more aligned with the audience that you really want to reach. And it can also be lower competition. And so it's more likely that you'll rank for those terms. If you try and go after digital marketing, you're going to be wading into a sea of traffic and content that's very unlikely you're going to hit the top 10. And as we all know, if you're not in that top 10, very unlikely people will ever see your content anyway. I think another thing to emphasize here is just that tools are becoming better at reading this. So keyword research has become much more important to really understand not just the user intent, but which keywords you want to go after and which ones present the best opportunity for you. One thing that SEMrush has added and really focused on in the past couple of years has been these intent indicators. So if you look up a keyword in SEMrush, this is just taken straight from their interface, it will have a little flag here for commercial, navigational, informational, or transactional. Those are different intents that people have when they search that term. That's just how SEMrush categorizes these terms. By the way, there's other things and other tools that help us understand, but this is the broadest possible definition of how you can understand your audience's intent. There's obviously more nuance from there. And if you need that nuance, there are some other steps you can take. That's where UX research can really do a lot to help you understand the very distinct needs of your users on the site. This can be something where you go directly to users in focus groups. You can approach them with questions in pop-up surveys. Email surveys are still a useful tool, reaching out to either an audience directly that you've curated, or even sending out anonymous emails to kind of a broader group. Usability studies that you can do. We have some tools on our side where we will actually be able to follow someone as they visit through the site, and they'll comment on video, kind of what they're running into and where they're running into issues. Those tools can be really valuable in just understanding what people are looking for or how they're navigating to try and understand this stuff. Heat mapping can show you what people are looking for and where people are going on your site and what's the most relevant and direct stuff that you need to provide more immediate paths to. How that ties back into SEO is then you can go back and look at that and say, okay, this is priority content. Maybe there are keywords based around this that we can optimize around. So that insight can connect back to your SEO and keyword strategy, where that's how SEO and UX and your site content start to work together in a really useful way. But when you couple that with digital ads on top of it, then you get something really, really powerful that's all working together to support the visibility of your site and how people can access it. You can also use analytics to get a little bit of user journey and traffic data. That can require an expert user in GA to kind of set up and get some of that knowledge, and also make sure that your is in the right setup and that you can properly understand how your traffic flows and where your conversions are hitting so that you can really follow that path. When it comes to another trick you can use, if you have a site search or a Google site search on your site, you can use search queries to see where people are maybe not seeing what they need to see on your site. So just looking at what people are using that search bar for can be a really helpful tool. And one of the best is just Google Search Console, really powerful tool to just hook up and see how people are finding your site through Google Search and just what keywords are really being engaged with, not just in terms of what you're ranking for, but in terms of actual click-through rates and how people are driving to your site and what keywords are proving most effective in that regard. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's been a lot of change in the past year or so to search engine results pages. And one of the most common questions we get is, because of this, are #1 rankings, or even pursuing rankings at all, less valuable? The reason that people ask that is because if you look at this example of searching digital marketing, the #1 ranking is not even above the fold anymore. There are AI overview tools that pop up and populate that whole top third, and then paid ads are 2 results that come in before you even see the #1 result. And then you have all the sidebar stuff. It's a much more distracting experience, and there's a lot more feature overviews and things that provide a lot of good information for users, but ultimately crowd out the #1 ranking. That can seem at first like maybe SEO and ranking #1 isn't as powerful as it used to be. But frankly, the traffic data hasn't changed very much. No, #1 results still get about the same amount of traffic as they used to get. And that's about 35% of the traffic that's landing on this page will end up going to the first result. Now, that doesn't mean that paid ads aren't powerful. They are. They get you to jump the line right away. And in fact, that's why we recommend kind of a two-pronged approach where you're doing both. You're focusing on your search engine optimization and also your paid ad placement so you can hit both places. But that organic result still gets a lot of traffic. Those feature overviews are also getting a lot of traffic. So the big thing is to remember that those are also valuable placements. So if you get that AI overview placement, that's still good to have. Or if you get the people also asked, those drop downs with a lot of questions that show up on search results pages, those are also getting engagement. So all of these new tools are actually really valuable, but getting that #1 and getting in those top 3 places is still really important. It also means that the second page is virtually invisible now. It's always been kind of true. It's now almost literally true that virtually no traffic will ever make it past position 10. So it's really, really important now to make it to the top 10 results. And that's how you get the most value out of search engine optimization now. So the key points are to prioritize your keyword research, make sure it's aligning with user intent and your strategic goals, and that you're reaching the right audience through search. You also want to make sure that you're creating original content that focuses on those goals and focuses on reaching your audience where their search behaviors are. So whatever we'd like to say is great, but we need to augment that with where's the audience and where's the search behavior, and what terms do we need to use, what phrasings do we need to include to make sure that we're reaching those people. I would say in the next year, definitely keep an eye out for search queries that seem conversational and seem like spoken word, not just the question terms that we've seen in the past, but maybe things that are a bit more unique. SEMrush is starting to surface some of these that are, either sometimes phrased as questions, but a lot of times just seem almost like somebody's speaking to the search engines. This is something to keep an eye on just as a possible long tail opportunity. And then I would say those search features, like I mentioned, the AI overview and the people also asked, those are worth keeping in mind. Those are valuable terms or valuable placements, and they will produce traffic for you. And they also are often the precursor, as they drive traffic initially, to a future organic ranking improvement. So I've seen a lot of clients where the first thing that pops up is the people also ask for each feature ranking. And then pretty soon after that, if people engage with it in that feature overview, then they start getting the actual organic positions start to improve. So it's kind of like, it's as if Google's using it as a testing ground. They put it in those overviews to see if people engage with it, and then you can get the lift from driving that extra traffic. And finally, the fundamentals haven't really changed. as far as content writing goes. It's writing relevant traffic, but it's also making sure you're using keywords in the right places. And that's the most important real estate, is just title and subheaders. That's what AI recognizes most of all. And that's what it understands and kind of uses to figure out what to highlight. So that's the biggest impact place where you can have your keywords.
All right, shifting from SEO into email marketing for 2025. So email personalization, we've talked about it a lot, but within email, it's so important. What is it? It's customizing email based on characteristics of a recipient. But I want you to try to think of different ways to do this. So looking in the example on the right here, we see customer signs up. If they spend over $200, they get the email on the left. If they spend less, they get the email on the right. Oftentimes we think of personas and trying to split people up and segment them in that way. In my previous life, we actually learned that if our customer on their first purchase spent over $200 in the cart, their lifetime value was really high, right? So we were very aggressive with our emails after the cart there, and we were able to break it up with very personal messages, and it was highly effective to converting those customers and then turning them into long-term customers within our email marketing. So think of the ways that you can break it down to be personal. Sometimes that's persona based, sometimes that's actually like a personal email to them. Sometimes that's just knowing that, hey, we have some what we call MVP customers that if we get them to convert, they're worth a lot more to us. There's different ways of doing it. You need to think of how it'll work within your business and create some flows that break it up for you. And it's really something that was once something to set you apart, but it's really mandatory now. People have so many emails. I get so many emails to my Gmail. I have a promotion section, I have a social section, and then my normal inbox. It's really important that you're personal so you stand out from that crowd. And people are more aware of emails now than ever and don't want to be on lists. That doesn't mean they aren't effective, but their inboxes are really, really cluttered, and you need to step up, stand out from the crowd with a very strong message to get people to take action and not unsubscribe from your list. And be mindful of what your customers actually want. Like when you're sending an email, ask yourself, is this something that customer actually wants, or is this just something we, from a business standpoint, want them to want? The balance there, right? Because you need to make strong business decisions, but you need to make sure you're speaking to them and giving them what they want, or they're going to leave your list. Meet their needs while satisfying your goals. And a tactic that I utilize, especially if you're sending out emails weekly or very often, is try to rest your list. Give them a break from the messaging. It helps avoid message fatigue. There's ways you can build that into your automated flows, but you need to make sure that sometimes the best choice is actually not to message someone. So you're not overdoing it and being in their inbox every single day. You need to read the data, you need to see what it says, but you can make decisions like this based on what you're seeing. In a big part of it, and a big part of the success is building a top-notch list. Get information from your customers when possible. When they're checking out on their cart, when they're submitting for a newsletter, the more information you can get, the better. But you do need to, there's a balance there. If you ask for too much information, people are less likely to submit the form. So you need to prioritize what's the most important pieces of information. Sometimes less is more because you actually are getting rid of low value customers or some spam just because you have more fields, but you need to balance then converting enough at the same time. So you got to find that balance, but get good information. Utilize your website data when possible. Oftentimes you're getting people on there, you can get their information there. You need to utilize it. Send customer surveys to understand what they want more, right? That can help you not only build your list, but understand what your list wants and build better emails over time. Your sales team will not like this, but if you can integrate data gathering into the sales process, that's a great way to get the information. If you can incentivize your sales reps to ask these right questions, hey, what's your updated email? What's your last name? What's the information important for you to know? Show your sales reps the benefit for them. I know in past, my sales reps hated it because they had so many things they had to ask. But if we could show them, hey, if you get us this information, we can build automated email flows for you, and it's going to help you sell more, they were more likely to go and ask those questions. And when it comes to top-notch list, everyone always brings this up. Do not buy a list. People always want to buy lists. Like I can get 2,000 emails just like that. These lists are not good lists. They're not your customer base. They're not going to respond. They don't know who you are. They didn't come to your site and submit. They are not successful. They're going to bring down your delivery rates and your actual engagement rates. And you do not want that because delivery rates matter. And another point on why you shouldn't buy lists and why you need to continuously gather emails from your website or your other ways of gathering them is list decay about 22.5% every year, right? So if you have 100 people, you're going to lose about 20. If your list is 100 people, you're going to lose 22 and a half of them going into 2025, right? It is what happens. Let's face it, real world things happen. People leave companies, they pass away, they just become uninterested. Those lists will decay, and you need to get rid of that decay over time. You can do that within your flows. Oftentimes what I've done is people haven't opened an email in X amount of months, we would get rid of them. Now you also have to understand maybe your sales cycle is they only purchase once a year, so it's a little different then, but you need to figure out when you should start removing people from your list. Right? And we can set rules to do that for us dynamically. And remember, low delivery rates and low open rates will hurt you in inboxes. Gmail, for example, is getting better at pushing emails into different inboxes, so I don't have to look at my promotions unless I want to look at my promotions. Excuse me. If you have low delivery rates, your actual emailing is going to suffer, and reaching those inboxes is just going to get lower and lower. And a pro tip, healthy lists can be added to your paid ads as well. So oftentimes, especially if you're in e-commerce and you have these great email lists that you're building constantly with new purchases, you can take those lists and put them into your paid ads for better targeting and keep them up to date. Sometimes it's the same information from your CRM. Sometimes it's a little more up to date, right? Because it's a little faster and you can get it and even automate it over and help your targeting better. Optimize personalization. Change imagery based on location or industry, right? If you know someone lives in a mountain range or in that type of area, you can include mountains in your images. If someone's in Wisconsin, you might want more flatlands, especially if you're doing something like a snowblower. You can change the scenery behind the image. Add first name or company name into the text if possible. Segment your email campaign so you can push it different products to be very specific to who you're sending. Don't just blast everyone with the same message. Give them a message that resonates with them. Or if they're interested in product A and not product B, only give them emails about product A or products related to product A that they might actually need. And a pro tip, if you can send an email from a sales rep, the open rate will the delivery rate and open rate will dramatically increase, right? It'll be much, much more successful than just sending stuff. And just look at how personal you can get. You can put little snippets of code in there. You can put a name in there. You can even overlay it sometimes on imagery as well. You can change sometimes the video recording that you're sending dynamically. There's so many things you can do. You need to learn what you have within your system and make changes based on it, right? Even the subject lines can be different based on who you're sending and the actions they took within those flows. All right, and that brings us to our Q&A.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate all those trends. We are right up against the top of the hour. We do have some questions. So if anybody needs to drop off, remember we're sending a link to a recording of this, and the Q&A will be part of that. I did want to circle back to the first question, the poll question you guys asked about using AI in digital marketing. So here are some of the answers we got. One was content outline generation. Another was idea generation. Helping to create a first draft of social posts if I'm having a mental block, research and outline for blogs, creating rough drafts for content, content generation, strategic planning advice. So those were a few of the answers to that poll question that we asked earlier in the presentation. Okay, for a few of those questions that were submitted, let me go ahead and get right to those. Would it be worthwhile to subscribe to platforms like SEMrush on our own, or to do initial research, even if we're working with a partner agency? Alex, what do you think?
I would definitely say it could never hurt to be examining things on your own. The more kind of direction that you can bring to an agency, the more kind of they can start running from the get-go with some ideas that you might have or some targets you might have. I will say I would keep the investment minimal, just because unless you're going to be really invest in becoming a pro user, at that point, you're already doing the keyword research on your own. I would say it's best to leave it to someone who's really used to looking through and wading through the terms and knows where to recognize new opportunities. Because that's the thing that can take a little while with SEMrush is identifying where there are new keywords that you should go after. So having some idea of volume and where there's traffic and where there's not to challenge your assumptions of maybe what phrases you need to use and what's commonly searched can be valuable. But to try and find new research, that's where somebody who's spent a lot of time with it can really provide a lot of additional insight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Alex. This one just came in through the Q&A. If you rank high for one search term, does that have any positive impact on any related terms?
So I can take that one. Yes, it does. So overall, Google tries to build an authority profile, and other search engines as well, tries to build kind of a profile of how authoritative your site is on various topics. So ranking for one term and getting a lot of traffic for a specific content can lift the overall authority score of your site and how authoritative and relevant Google sees your site for various terms. So even if you have a ranking that doesn't, sometimes it's good to go after those big, broad, high traffic rankings that may not be exactly perfectly relevant, that maybe you see an opening to just grab some quick traffic and get a good ranking. Maybe it's a low competition term that you could possibly own. Good to go after those anyway to bolster your overall search profile, and it can bring in more traffic. And then you might see other rankings lift as a result, as Google recognizes, hey, they're an authority on this particular topic.
And to add to that a little bit, we've seen clients who actually are like, oh, I didn't want to rank for these keywords, so we got rid of these pages. I would say if you're ranking for something already, even if it's not relevant, keep it. It's free traffic and it builds the authority that Alex was talking about, and that has a long-term impact on your site in a positive way.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you for that. And thank you, Alex, for your answer. I do have two important questions on cookies. So I'm going to read both of these and let you guys kind of work your way through it. So one question was, what about Google's ongoing threat of eliminating cookies? And with the status of Google cookies, how should our strategies align for monitoring website traffic?
Yeah, so the easy answer on this is Google is not getting rid of cookies unless they have a very effective way to replace them and make sure they're making money from what they do with the cookies and retargeting and things like that. I think this summer we were doing a podcast and I was kind of explaining that, and the day before we released it, they actually announced they were going to keep cookies on Chrome. So I don't expect them to make any changes unless they have a way to make sure that revenue stays in their hands. So I'm not concerned about it. And if that day comes, they are going to have an option set up that will be able to go in and change something probably in Google Tag Manager to utilize it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I really do need to move on and conclude. There's a couple other questions here that were submitted. If you're still on the horn here, we will reach out to you directly with answers to those questions. So thank you very much for submitting them. So I just wanted to add before we wrap things up for today, we would like to offer everyone in attendance a complimentary consultation to answer any additional questions you may have about digital marketing trends, AI, paid ads, SEO, cookies, what have you. To request a consultation, visit us at nwsdigital.com/ and when you're there, choose digital advertising from the consultation type field dropdown. Also, please join us on March 13th as we present U and UX, the relationship you probably don't know you need. As always, all of our webinars are complimentary and begin at 10 a.m. Central Time. You can learn more and register at learn@northwoods.com. And if you're looking for more information on a specific topic or just want to stay up to date on the latest digital trends and developments in the constantly changing world of digital, you can check out our blog, recorded webinars, our YouTube channel, and we have a brand new vodcast that we've recently launched called Around the Campfire, featuring casual conversations with our experts in all things digital. We encourage you to check it out. And as I mentioned, we are sending out a link to a recording of the webinar so you can pick up those links in the recording. And lastly, if you'd like to learn more about Northwoods and the many services we offer, from website design and development to custom software, digital marketing to digital advertising and marketing strategy, please visit us at nwsdigital.com to explore our services, details, view our client stories, and much, much more. And after the window closes, a short survey will be available. We would greatly appreciate it if you could share your feedback on how we did this morning. So with that, I'd like to thank each of you, Ed and Alex, for joining me today. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day, and again, Happy New Year.